Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Mark. We've got a great guest today, Jim Goad. Hey Jim, how's it going?
Oh, fantastic. You pronounce my name correctly, too. You know, in every hospital room and everywhere it's Goad now. I don't know why. I'm like, do you drive down the Road? People can't get, like, four-letter names correct anymore.
That's especially interesting because Goad is actually a word in the English language.
Well, yeah, used to be. I think we're down to about 50 words, so not many people know it.
And racism's one of them.
Racism's one of the main words.
Okay, I promised we would not get too into politics and culture.
I think it's more mysticism and religion than politics and culture. I think racism is the scarlet letter. It's a way to demonize people. It's a way to tell who's in the in group, who's in the out group. It's as ridiculous and hysterical, and in fact, much more so than the Red Scare was when I was a kid. And I'm old enough to remember the Red Scare. It's completely off the top. People that, you know, in the 60s could see through hypocrisy and sanctimony and lynch mob mentality, completely swallowed and adopted that stuff and made it even more sick and egregious and persistent. Every fucking day is a nigger scandal and a woman scandal and a homophobia scandal. And, you know, it ruins careers and people, you know, join in little social media lynch mobs to destroy people because they think differently. When the fuck did this start, and why did it get so bad? If someone thinks differently than me and, you know, kind of I find them annoying, the worst that's going to happen is we don't hang out. But it's gotten really disturbing and totalitarian to me. And to me it is Orwellian. It's a way to control thought and speech and narrow things down to where you don't even have words to voice disagreement anymore. I mean, once you're taught with that scarlet R, everything's over. It's just a conversation ender, which is insane because racism is natural. People are tribal, and I'm speaking of someone like way on the antisocial end of the spectrum. I'm not a tribally minded person at all, but most people are, whether they realize it or not. If they're not racially tribal, they're ideologically tribal. And my main problem is when people act in packs. They're much more unsavory than individuals.
You see, this is why I like you, and this is why I like having you on the show. First of all, you just say awesome things with that hint of passion, maybe perhaps anger. Either way, I like it. But also,
I think
it's easy to have you on because I could just say one word and let you go, and I don't have to do any work. This is great.
Yeah, I'm kind of an obsessive thinker. But, passion. I did an interview with myself about 10, 12 years ago, and I said I think where people get me wrong and what bothers me a lot is they question or don't even consider that I might be sincere. They actually think that they're so important that I'm trying to offend them or hurt them or acting up in school, get a reaction out of them. No, I actually feel these things. At least grant me that. I've been trying to track down a quote from my favorite writer, H.L. Mencken. I read like a dozen years ago and never been able to find it. He was talking about somebody and criticizing him because he criticized everyone, but he said something along the lines of, this man does not even have the basic honor to consider that maybe his enemies have good intentions too. That's the way I look. I mean, anyone who's, no matter where, everyone thinks they're right. Everyone, for the most part, unless they're Machiavellian, is sincere in what they think. I just think a lot of people are wrong.
Yeah, it's such a narcissistic mindset, and this is the fault of my generation a lot. But if somebody says something that disagrees with you, you think, oh, it's about me and my feelings. Like, what? No. This has nothing to do with it.
I just edited an article that's coming out on tackymag.com on Friday by Fred Reed, who's fantastic. He lives somewhere in Mexico. But he's just talking about how the entire culture has become feminized, and what is it, like 3/4 to 90% of all school teachers are females, and that, I guess it's become sexist to say that there are essential differences in the temperament of females and males. But when you have females running the schools, yes, everything becomes about feelings. There's not much, technical education.
Well, Jim, let me tell you, I've got personal experience with this. I'm in the process of being kicked out of grad school right now because I don't have enough empathy.
What did the administrators say? What's the charge? What was your sin?
For not expressing enough empathy in the clinic, because I'm in grad school for psychology.
Okay.
So I'm just not acting like a girl enough.
Well, Fred Reed goes on this. I don't know if empathy even plays into it. He says women are totalitarian. It's like, if there's an all-men's club, they want to bust it down. Men don't care if there's an all-women's club. And, yeah, the most intolerant people I've known have been women, basically. If a society didn't want me to become a sexist, then I shouldn't have been given the mother and sister I was given and raised, in school by nuns. There's so much sadism and cruelty and malice in the female animal. But to point out at any of these things, you get called nasty names. But the way I look at it, it's like, well, all I'm saying is that women are human. What are you trying to say, that they're just these innocent butterflies? That's sort of demeaning, isn't it? Isn't it actually giving them props to say that they can scheme and backstab? And to me, that's just saying they're really no better or worse than men. They just adopt different techniques.
Yeah,
I always remember the line in Seinfeld when George and Jerry were talking about giving wedgies, and they asked Elaine, like, do girls give wedgies? And they're like, no, we just gossip about somebody until they develop an eating disorder. And there's a great book called When She Was Bad about female violence, and a woman wrote it, and she talks about how up until about age 12, males and females express aggression the same. They hit you. But, their testosterone kicks in and guys become naturally stronger. Women develop much more complex modes of aggression.
Verbal subterfuge, as I call it.
Yeah, shaming, gossiping, manipulation, turning people against one another. All of that.
But this is women if left up to free reign. And I think a lot of the fault with feminism lies in men who just accept it blindly because they're too scared to say anything.
Well, it's a non-alpha mating strategy. You get these white knights who want to, hey, I'm down with the cause, sister. Now, I'll tell you, I wrote on Twitter once, no woman in world history has ever lubricated to hearing, yes, dear. Chicks don't like that. They say they want that in the guys, and they step on their face when the guys are that way. I've said this a million times, too. When I got out of prison 12 years ago, chicks were lined up around the block to fuck me. And it surprised me because they all knew about what I went to prison for. And we want to get into the details of that. I never shy away from it. But, my God, it was like, finally, a guy who's a guy. Because the night I got out, I remember we went to this place called Dots in Portland, this hipster restaurant bar. And after 2.5 years, like in county jail, then I'm a minimum security, then Oregon State Penitentiary for the last 9 months, I get out and I see all these slack-shouldered guys, scruffy little facial hair and Buddy Holly glasses with the white tape. And you see all these butch, like, tattooed lesbians.
You should move to New York. You'd throw up.
Well, it's just, I was just, Patton Oswalt just sent me this link to this 1940s radio show, an episode really creepy, but you just hear the guys talking, and they've done studies. I did an article about this about a year ago called Our Balls, Our Cells. Testosterone and sperm counts have been plummeting over the last 100 years. Not really sure why, but, yeah, you hear these guys.
Yeah, like 20% in the last 30 years, I heard.
Yeah, and whether it's by design or accident, I don't really know or care, but it's obvious. So that's two of the things that really changed. I was in prison 2.5 years. The world changed in two really significant ways. When I got out, there were cell phones and there were lesbians. Neither one existed when I went in. But it started to dawn on me. So look at these guys. Be a lesbian too. There's just nothing appealing about them. And it's funny. Like most of the shit I've gotten for my crime has been from guys. And ultimately, they're trying to a lot of these cases. Yeah. The only guy who ever said anything to my face, I was DJing a Wanda Jackson concert in Portland, and she's 200 years old, and I guess she does multiple sets in one night because she needs a diaper change or something. But she was playing, and I went to get one of my duels at the bar because I haven't had a drink since Reagan's first term, and I'm coming back, and they tell me she's going to go off, so I have to get up to the DJ stand, and the crowd was packed. I'm like, excuse me, DJ booth, excuse me, and I hear somebody going, excuse me, DJ booth. I turn around, I'm like, somebody got a problem? I don't hear anything. Then I take another step or two. At least I don't beat women. I saw who said it. I got right up in his face. I'm like, you want to go outside and see if I can beat men? He's like, no. And later after the show, he comes up, he's like, I'm sorry about that. If you want to know the truth, I've hit my girlfriend. I'm like, I'm sure you have. Get the fuck out of here. It's like, wow, going out on a limb being against hitting women. Ooh, ouch. Against child molestation.
It's like the anti-rape club.
you're a renegade. It's like they take the that's like being against racism in 2013. Wow, brave. I would have respect for you if you were down in Mississippi in 1947 spewing that, because at least you were contrarian and there was risk. There's no fucking risk being against racism and misogyny or any of these bugaboos, these new sins of the cathedral. None. And I've just known too many fucked up, mean women to think otherwise. No, they're fucked up just like guys are.
All right, so I like this. I like that the listener is getting a good picture of you and where you're coming from, and why I like you as a writer so much. So,
there's sorry, I keep jumping on you here, but I've got a short attention span because I'm senile. But the Columbia College in Chicago teaches shit magnet in some censorship class that they have every year, and or every semester, and they'll read the book and discuss it for a couple of weeks, and then the teacher will have me call in, and like by surprise. They just hear, like, they don't know who it is, and all of a sudden it's me talking to them. And invariably, half the class is just primed to fucking hate me and impale me when I start talking to them. But by the end of the class, they're purring and eating out of my hand. And I'm starting to think maybe I should do radio or something, because the human side of me, I think, comes across a little more when I'm talking than in writing. It's not like anything I write is not part of me. It's just not all of me, but somehow that doesn't come through in the writing. I was inspired to do Answer Me. There was an essay by John Waters where he said, if you have an unsavory or an unpleasant or a negative character or physical trait, play it up. Make that your glamorous thing. Like if you have a bad acne problem, rub potato chips on your face. I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm an angry guy. Let's make that my virtue. But it became this thing where like the persona dwarfed everything else. It's like, well, people don't even bother to deal with what I'm writing about, which is depressing, but it's kind of comical at the same time. I'm on deadline right now. Thought Catalog is putting out a book of mine that's due at the end of the month about all my real life and online stalkers. Like it's online is real life in some way, but it is a different dynamic. But these people, and they're invariably people who like me or actually have an even more inflated image of me than I have of myself. And in many cases, like in some cases, there's one case of a girl in Texas, I never even had any interaction with her. And I just ignored her. And so she went on this whole jihad. She became a psychology student and concluded that I was a sociopathic narcissist who didn't deserve child custody, and she was going to make sure. And just on this one story after the next of how these people deal with me.
But she secretly wanted to sleep with you, it sounds like.
Well, at the end of it, this is like a solid year. And this is the pickle that I'm in. I get out, they gave me 2 strikes for one crime. People don't realize how these laws work. 1 conviction, 2 strikes. 1 more felony, I'm done for life. And so I'm vulnerable. So they kind of, I guess, pick at me and says, it's going to be hard to portray myself as a sympathetic character. Anyone knew the fucking details of what landed me in prison. Here's the URL, jimgoad.net/sound/ann, ANNE.mp3. Again, that's jimgoad.net, sound, ann with an E, mp3. Listen to who I went to prison over. So somebody who stalked, threatened, just pushed me at a time when I was emotionally vulnerable, where my wife and my ex-wife was dying, and I finally struck back. You can look at my mugshot. I had scratches all over my face. Police found my blood on her jacket. Started when she lunged at me and scratched me, then I held her wrists. This black guy, and I only mention he's black because there's like 5 of them in Portland. They're called the Trailblazers. Walks up to the car, asks if we're okay. I'm like, yeah. Even though I had a restraining order against her and could have gotten her arrested for hitting me again, that's how inhumane and cruel and demonic I was. No, it's cool. We'll handle this. And I'm turning back. She punches me in the nose. I see my blood. That's it. I take her up to the hills. I beat the shit out of her. Don't feel bad about it. And I know that probably really hurts me career-wise. But people care about honesty. I'm your man. All the social pressure in the fucking world doesn't mean a goddamn thing to me. If you don't like me, we don't trade Christmas cards and we get past it.
And that's what we need in writing, because so many writers have become politicians. And I think that's just the saddest thing. That's the exact opposite of the purpose of writing, is to be a politician.
Well, or to be an advocate for a side. That's the thing. The tacky side, I guess it's considered right-wing, and a lot of the guys who write for it, but I don't consider myself. I consider myself a skeptic. I'm skeptical about human nature. And somebody in the comments a week or 2 ago wrote, all this talk about left and right and statist and libertarian, it all boils down to people who want to be left alone and people who just won't leave you the fuck alone. And I'm somebody who wants to be left alone. I don't force my writing on anybody, but all these stalkers kind of just force themselves on me. And and being an whatever it is, sociopathic, autistic, antisocial, I don't care about approval. And I definitely don't give a shit about celebrity. If I did, I would not have put out the rape issue of Answer Me at the height of my popularity. I hated these fans. They had no most of them had no idea what I was about or what I was doing. They got it all, cool, Manson, dude, right on. Date rape, no, fuck that. So I purposely alienated them. But I get
the worst is a fan who's a fan for the wrong reason, who's just latching onto some lame joke that you said, and he doesn't understand the point of what you're saying. That's the worst.
Or they say that they assure you that they get you, but the minute you're like, okay, can you just step back a little bit, they will throw every fucking thing that the rest of the world throws at me on me. It's like, well, obviously you didn't get me in the first place, or you wouldn't be bringing these things up. But again, don't care about celebrity, but these people see me as, some kind of public figure. And it's like, nah, when you scratch me, I bleed just like Jews do in The Merchant of Venice. Like, really not. And that's the other thing. I don't think anything I'm saying is really that outrageous. I think the fucking world has gone crazy. And this was one thing that really illustrates this. Okay, I was in prison 2.5 years. By about 2 years, I started to question my own sanity because I hadn't been given a chance to tell my side of the story to the world. I was locked up. And I'm starting to think, am I just nuts? Am I just this evil, predatory abuser who's in such denial that it didn't happen the way that I remember it? And because actually that would be better. That would be much more comforting. If I was just this evil bastard and was locked up, I said, all right, cool. But I had so many chances to keep this girl out of jail and played that card every fucking time. She attacked me 3 times after I got a restraining order against her. I called the cops each time and then called them off before they got there each fucking time. So yeah, I'm seeking comfort in the idea that I'm just this abuse man. So I'm in this jail cell with this guy. Okay, what part of my prison domestic abuse narrative did cut off? I can just pick up the story.
You were in prison and you were talking to a guy.
Okay, his name is Richard Thomas, and he claimed to be the cousin of John Boy Walton. His name was also Richard Thomas. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's always amused me. And when you're in prison or jail, if you have any kind of notoriety, you're like a superstar. They love that shit. And he got excited that I had written a book, and his girlfriend or whoever was enabling him from outside and putting money on his books, she bought a hardcover of the Redneck Manifesto, and she let it slip. There was a picture of me on the hardcover, and she said, well, he's kind of a nice-looking guy. Oh, boy, wrong thing to say. So this guy starts picking at me really passive-aggressively. These little fucking cells, 5.5 by 7.5 feet, 2 guys. For, a solid week or two, you're kind of getting wrinkles. I see some gray hairs, and after like 2 weeks, I'm like, what the fuck is your problem? And he lunges at me, and I grab his wrist with both hands. I think, why do you fucking have to take it here? Because the thing in jail, the thing that in prison I was most concerned about was losing time off for good behavior. Now that doesn't even exist, but back then, if you behaved well and didn't get citations, you would get 20% of your time taken off. And just that moment when I grabbed his wrists and thought, why the fuck does he have to do this? It clicked. That's what happened the night of my crime. She lunged at me. I grabbed her wrist. I thought, why the fuck does she have to take it there? At that moment, I thought, Jesus Christ, I'm not crazy. The fucking world's crazy. If they're so simplistic and stupid to think this was just some evil, demonic man preying on a little angel, they're dumb as fuck. But I'm not sure where I was even going with that story. But, well, yeah, okay, just...
The world's crazy.
But the thing that propels me is I think they're wrong. I mean, I know Michael Board. He's on my... the Maximum Rock and Roll writer, MykelBoard, and he's this little Jewish communist who disagrees with me about everything. But yeah, we can find some spots where we never argue about anything, which is amazing. Most people they're just ideologues, and that's the problem with political writing. I got into this huge feud with this other writer, and he's going to be mentioned in the Stalker book because he stalked me by email. He was too cowardly to debate me about what the initial issue was, which was the Wisconsin teachers situation a couple of years ago, where they were shitting themselves because, my God, they had to pay like 5% of their health insurance. They were throwing tantrums in Madison. I would like to discuss that. I'm a private sector worker. I pay these motherfuckers. They churn out retards. I don't even have health insurance. I'm supposed to rally to their cause and the working class? No, they're exploiting me. Fuck them. And if we had kept it confined to that, it would have been great. But no, he focused on the bitch beating. And it turns out the guy bragged in print of fucking a 15-year-old when he was in his 30s, and was also accused in the Moscow Times by an ex-associate of being a rapist who didn't have the balls to admit it in his magazine. So I hammered the living fucking shit out of this guy. It was so sweet to do that after 15 years. It was like the first time my name, he hits women. It's like, I hit women back. But just to be able to use that against somebody else, like put them in their fucking place. Because it's really hard to describe where you are used as this fucking punching bag. It's like, I went to prison for fighting back.
Well, yeah.
They're not going to break my spirit. Sorry, guys. I'm just not wired that way.
I can imagine how that would feel really good getting out of prison and being able to do something like that. I haven't been to prison, but I have been in grad school, which kind of feels...
The thing about this guy is he's always belching and farting about what a journalist he is and how other journalists are corrupt. But the guy is a straight, stone-cold ideologue, and I have this laundry list of journalistic things he's fucked up. So if it doesn't fit into the scheme, he ignores it. He's the furthest fucking thing from a journalist. He doesn't have an open mind. He's picked a team, and he's fighting for the team. That's not me. And that's why I get into trouble, like with the tacky reader sometimes, and I don't consider myself part of the team. Sorry. I think liberalism is the dominant ideology. It's wrong to the core. Equality is a fucking joke. You guys are acting just like religious people with burning witches over it. That's all I care about. As far as joining another sanctimonious, self-righteous team that denies another half of reality that makes their narrative uncomfortable, don't have any interest in it. I was invited to speak at the American Renaissance Conference last year. Not sure if you're familiar with Jared Taylor, AMREN.com. He's a Yale graduate, brilliant, and I consider him a journalist. Even though he's an advocate, he sticks to the fucking facts and doesn't employ all the logical fallacies that these pundits and so-called journalists do. And, I was going to talk about I'm happy to be on the wrong side of history. All these people talk about, you're on the right. Well, did people tell that to the Indians as they were taking the land? It's too bad you're on the wrong side of history. Did they tell them, the slaves on the well, sucks to be you. You're on the wrong side of history. They don't, how triumphalist these motherfuckers have become. And they're acting exactly like the people they claim to hate from, 1, 2, 3, 400 years ago. I know I'm rambling all over the place. It reminds me of my encounters with the Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice in Portland. These guys were given carte blanche by City Hall to go out and beat the fuck out of anybody that remotely suspected of being a Nazi. Some of my sources told me these guys had friends in the DA's office, even relatives in the DA's office, and had been guilty of murder and got off with it scot-free. But they harassed me over wearing an iron cross necklace, and we got into 3 scraps over it. It's like, well, who the fuck is the Nazi here? I don't give a fuck what you wear. Who's the intolerant one? And that's what I've realized happens. It's like power's on. It has a lifespan. These same motherfuckers who in the 60s they were for the little guy, they've got the power now. And they're acting every bit the jerk off that Richard Nixon did back in the 60s. So that's what I'm skeptical about is, wherever the crowd is, wherever the general consensus is, my immediate presumption is they're wrong. Because they got there not through, logical deduction or inference, but through peer pressure and obeying whoever was in power at the time. So, yeah, I think I'm quite a sweet guy and much less unrelenting and that's definitely the furthest fucking thing from an ideologue. It's just the way I approach leftism is as sort of like a disillusioned person. It's the same reason I'm mad at the myth of Santa Claus, because I was lied to about it. Same thing, I will remain mad at Christianity. I was fucking lied and had the shit scared out of me for 15 or 16 years until I read enough of the Bible to realize there's no way it works. Same thing with leftism. Innate equality, every disparity is caused by hatred and racism. Yeah, give me a fucking break. How juvenile and simplistic and religious is that sort of thinking? If you really believe in evolution, if you really believe in diversity, You might be open to the idea that different groups on different continents evolve different aptitudes. Why is that the biggest fucking heresy in the world right now? Makes no sense to me. Does it mean I hate black people? No, I hate whoever fucking lied to me that everyone's equal and pushes the lie and causes destruction and witch hunts and it's the same shit as the Red Scare. They will never cop to it, though. The article I did for Tacky yesterday was about the Holodomor, the Ukrainian Holocaust. And, estimates vary like with everything. At least with the Holodomor, you're allowed to challenge the official number. Anywhere from 1.5 million to 11 million I've seen. Starved to death. Pretty evident, but I won't say conclusively that Stalin did this to break the national will of the Ukrainians, suck them into the Soviet Union, and make them speak Russian, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't hear about it. Why? Well, it's because leftists were doing it. And that's why you can't talk about Mao or Stalin. It's Hitler. And again, I'm old enough to remember this is exactly like 1984. When I was a kid, it was communists. If you were a communist, you couldn't get a job. You'd be cast out, and now it's Nazi. In 1984, they kept changing who the enemy was and rewriting history. How about this radical fucking idea that if you give people power over other people, they're going to abuse it?
So it's really not about one idea against another. It's more about people being more comfortable with being individuals as opposed to being part of a tribe or a collective.
I don't think, it's not like trying to preach everyone should be individuals because I don't think they're capable. That's the thing. I'm just a different breed, I think. And like I said, I'm epileptic. Maybe there's something neurological that's just different from me. Or sociopathic, autistic. I've noticed that a lot. Anyone who's not just a full-blown socialist is a sociopath. You hate. It's like, no, I just want to wipe someone else's ass. I don't ask for anything. Just give me my tax money back. I'll pay for my colonoscopies. But other people are just, they're herd animals. And I've said this too, the skinheads in Portland, they would have been in anti-black lynch mobs 100 years ago. These motherfuckers are not brave at all. They go with the tide. They think they're fighting the power, and they actually represent it. It sickens me. So yeah, passion, definitely. And that's the thing. That's why I'd like to face that. Oh, you're just doing this. It's the old shtick. Oh, anti-PC. Oh, that's so 90s. Yeah, like it hasn't become ridiculously more institutionalized and entrenched and tyrannical and redolent of any sort of witch hunt or moral panic throughout history since the 90s.
Oh,
every fucking day.
Definitely
every day.
Has not.
No, it's just insatiable. I really think... I think the problem with people who aren't liberals now is they've been too fucking nice. I think it's time to bring back some nuclear-powered bullying, or at least like I did with this other writer. It's like, really, bitch beater? Okay, you fuck underage girls. I've been to prison. I know who would have gotten his ass kicked for their crime. Wouldn't have been me. Yeah, just play it. If you want to play these fucking games, I'll play the fucking game and beat you at it. Cowards. They just. It's rare to find it. I've got don't have a lot of friends. That's by design. The ones I have are fucking golden. Pretty much everybody I consider a close friend I consider smarter than me and nobler than me. Ever heard me say that about anyone? It's like, no, but these people are like, I don't resent them for being smarter. I just can learn from them. But yeah, and there are also people who are not just tethered to a fucking ideology. It's so depressing to see what happened to, again, I remember that you would get your fucking head kicked in for being a hippie in the 60s. Now you get your head kicked in for not being one. So it's just they've switched costumes. Okay, you take off the angel costume, put on the devil costume, give your angel. It's just the same pattern. Or I told a friend yesterday, I'm like, hey man, a lot of my most embarrassing secrets, but I'm gonna go one level lower. I'm gonna quote the Who. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It really is the same fucking thing no matter what window you're in. Human nature sucks. People suck. Stay away from most of them. Find the good ones and be as happy as you can.
I think a lot of the frustration comes from you are in a world that has been philosophically in the making for hundreds of years, and you're put up against these anti-intellectual ideas, and you're fighting against it. You're pissed off.
What is it? What is that? Maybe it's I have a lack of social intelligence. I remember I went through this really wacky New Age phase for like 6 months when I was in college. And I remember reading one of these New Age magazines, like the difference between a mystic and a psychotic is a mystic knows when to shut up. I think I do have this sort of naivete. It's like, well, if they just, if they listen to me, they'd realize that I'm being rational. No, that's really not how people work. I mean, things such as social pressure that has far more, and approval.
So, yeah, the social pressure thing, I like that. Where did that come from, or where did you start not caring about that? How do you think that happened?
I was weird from the fucking start. I mean, I cover this in Shit Magnet a little bit. My brother, who's 13 years older than me, told me this story. I would have seizures at night when I was a kid while sleeping, and my brother's not a dumb guy. He's not superstitious, and he's not a liar. He swears by this story. He says I was about 3 one night, so that would have made him 16. My mom called him into the bedroom. I'm thrashing around having a seizure during my sleep, and all of a sudden I stop. A gurgling sound comes out of my mouth, and I speak in an adult woman's voice. Okay, I'm like, Johnny, what do you mean? He's like, no, Jimmy, an adult woman's voice came out of you. I'm like, well, that's weird. And then
so you are in touch with your feminine side.
Well, yeah, more than most. But he said they took me to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said I was off the charts intellectually compared to kids my age. But so at night, while sleeping, the only way to work out some of this excess brain energy was, to talk in my sleep. It doesn't explain the woman's voice coming out of me, but I was special. Whether I'm damaged or it's an evolutionary advantage, I'm not like most people. So I never stuck with the crowd. I was able, there are times in my life I was able to gather a posse around me and manipulate. I just don't like to. I don't like to lie. So all this stuff about woman beater, not. I don't care. Is it is what I'm saying true or not? The only way these people could shame me is catch me in a lie, and unless it's an ex-girlfriend, I'm not lying to anybody. But they don't realize that. They think if they can get other people against me, it's going to crush me. It's like, no, find where I really fucked up in my reporting. Point out some gaping, embarrassing hole in my logic.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to make me feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. I received some hate mail recently, about a week ago, and I said the same thing to this person. I was like, look, the only way you could hurt me is to question my integrity, or to tell me where I lied, or am not true to myself. That's where you get it, and you can't do that. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
They just don't get, and that's what all these, it sounds so self-serving to call them fans. I don't know what they're readers of mine. They act like fucking fans. Have you seen The King of Comedy with Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis?
No.
Oh my God, the best Martin Scorsese movie ever made. Easily, in my book, one of the top 10 American films ever made. Briefly, Jerry Lewis is a late-night, like Johnny Carson talk show host. Robert De Niro plays this loser wannabe comedian who lives in his mom's basement called Rupert Pupkin. And he rescues Jerry Langford, the Lewis character, from a throng, who won his autograph. And eventually he tries to push himself on Jerry and get him to listen to his comedy routine. He doesn't. He winds up kidnapping him to force him to listen to his jokes. It just goes completely awry. And the full thing is, I don't know if they've yanked it, but you can watch the whole movie on YouTube. Great fucking movie. But what you learn is, I think it was Bill Murray who said, if you have a choice between being rich and famous, go rich. Because people think if they know you through your writing that they deserve a personal relationship with you. It's like, well, if you read my writing, you realize I hate most people. So, but it's always the dickheads who are just pushy and obnoxious enough to muscle their way to the front that I have to deal with. What really sucks is a lot of people who I think probably understand me are polite enough to leave me alone. I never get to interact or deal with those people, which blows. It's always the starstruck or whatever, and then when you just say, hey, you're weirding me out a little bit, or no, I don't need that. The vengeance they try to tear you down with, exactly like the girl who sent me to prison. I've got it all fucking documented. The way she built me up, just worship the fucking ground I walked on, and it was intoxicating for a while. No. Acted that way to me. It was mostly this idea of celebrity. But the minute I'm like, hey, I'd like to move on without you, everything was wrong with me. Had to just completely smash the fucking idol, tear down the altar. I was like, well, this is nothing I consciously play into. I think I have a kind of a realistic assessment of who I am. Special, yeah. I think I do things and say things that not many people do. But otherwise, you have to worship it. It creeps me out. To me, the first thing that's going to send me running from someone is if they're a little too effusive with the praise, because those are the ones that usually fucking turn. But yeah,
well, I did start out this podcast with praise.
Huh?
So now I'm thinking you're talking about me here.
There's a level where it's like, okay, this person, it's just, where you kind of cringe. It's like, well, okay, the most persistent stalker in the book that I'm going to deal with is this Korean guy. He co-stalked me and Gavin McInnes from Vice, ex of Vice, now Street Carnage. And he sent me an email years ago, you are the genius of your generation. That should have been like when I cut off all contact. Because I was like, yeah, I think I'm great, but, tone it down a bit. You're making me uncomfortable. But
that's weird.
It's such a good story because I have this Facebook group, and I actually only got on Facebook because this other stalker who thought I was too easy on Jews created a fake MySpace and Twitter account claiming to be me. And I had to kind of wrestle them. And so I jumped on Facebook just to render this impossible. I would have /Jim Goad. And so I realized somebody had already started a Jim Goad group on there. I'm like, I'll go and, I'll take questions. It's a good place to talk to people about what I write about. And I don't have friends on Facebook. I'm not there to see what you fucking ate for lunch. But so I had this Facebook group, and one day someone asked, there was just this ridiculous story about, political correctness gone insane. And someone asked me, well, how do you think it got to this point? And I recommended a book called The Culture of Critique by Kevin MacDonald, a PhD psychology professor at University of California, San Diego. And here's one of the third rails, but this is me. It's like you say I can't research or write about something, I head straight for it. He traces a lot of it to Jews. And he's an evolutionary psychologist, and he says, how did this tiny group of people, there are, 14 million Jews on Earth right now? They're outnumbered by Muslims 100 to 1. How the fuck, out of all the groups that have been dispersed throughout history, how did they maintain their separate identity and survive, without being assimilated and wiped out, through soft genocide? He argues it's because they were very, very, very tight as a group, had an extremely strong group consciousness, what in other contexts would be called racism. And that because they were a minority, they found themselves in hostile territory, they, to survive, had to manipulate groups against one another. But if you trace the roots of political correctness, whether you're talking about Freud or Marx or the Frankfurt School, disproportionately, you don't want to talk about Jews controlling or this evil. But if you want to talk about statistics, if you're talking about a group that's 1.5, 2% of the population, and just so happen to be, 90% of the Bolsheviks or 75% of the Frankfurt School, it's like, well, why are there so many Jews in this? And it's like, well, to change the culture so it's not so hostile toward Jews. And he said that a lot of this political correctness, it was not anti-racism, it was anti-white. And specifically because of their, however 1,000 years, however long Jews have been dispersed throughout Europe and persecuted, they feared any kind of white monolith. And if you look at immigration laws passed, immigration laws from the 20s, the big one that was passed in 65, disproportionately, we're not talking about 2%, 58, the money and the influence were Jewish people. And it was a survival strategy. We don't want another Holocaust. Let's make it multicultural, and maybe we can survive it. And to me, that kind of makes sense.
All right. Well, our listeners can go read that book and decide for themselves. I'm not going to.
What's the other explanation? This mystery hate virus called Anti-Semitism. That to me that's primitive and religious. I see that there's competing ethnic groups here, and it makes perfect. But this guy freaked the fuck out over this. And man, they must have really gotten to your brain in prison. These Nazis that you hung out. And man, I'm just trying to save you from. It's like, sorry, and to me, it makes people ask me how it got politically correct. The big philosophical forces behind PC were Jews. Sorry, 2% of the population, 50% of the Democratic Party's.
But there's philosophical forces here at work too. It's not just I mean, there's a lot of subjectivism that stems from the 17th and 18th century that has worked its way into philosophy and changed how people think.
Right.
And made them mindless, and so because they're mindless, they're tribal and collectivist.
Well, Europe is, Christendom, right? Christianity was founded by a Jew. I mean, you could get into Nietzsche and how he thought Christianity ruined Europe and the fighting spirit because it was a slave religion. It was, concocted when the Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt, so it came up with a slave morality. Meekness and submission and self-abnegation were virtues. In the jungle, those are not virtues. That's what gets you killed. So no, I'm not even saying Jews control it. It's all Jew. I mean, this is how people they make false inferences from what I'm saying. It's like a disproportionate amount of those philosophical forces were Jewish. If you want to talk statistics, there's no fucking denying it. I mean, it would be foolish to deny. If you want to talk about the reasons, I'm open to the reasons. I see them as brilliant. I think Jews are intellectually superior. I think most of the, by and large, there are exceptions, and some dumb ones. This Asian stalker is the dumbest fucking Asian I've ever had to deal with. But yeah, I think, and I've heard theories as to why they may have developed superior intelligence. Well, during the Middle Ages, the scholars of Christianity were celibates. If you were a rabbi, you got all the chicks. So, if you believe that intelligence can be inherited, maybe that was a good survival strategy. They had smart guys reproducing. And whatever the fucking... But you're not even allowed to talk about any of this shit. I mean, people's faces go blank. They're horrified.
Does a lot of this come from the book, The 10,000-Year Explosion?
I haven't read it.
Oh, because I just heard about that. And it talks about the recent evolutionary forces that have been shaping society since agriculture. And it sounds like something they would talk about, but...
No, this is more just intellectual traditions, and that what is known as anti-Semitism is just a reaction to people who won't assimilate into your culture. Again, we're stepping on all kinds of third rails here. Pretty much hated wherever they've been throughout history. Is that just coincidence? Is it just this mystery, or is it maybe because they maintain their difference, and that's going to create hostility? I mean, that makes perfect fucking sense to me, and it's not, calling them evil, or it explains how they were able to survive and wield power way beyond their numbers.
Well, look, I mean, you may be right, but we're getting into territory that I really know nothing about.
Okay.
And so I'm not prepared to say one way or another.
This is why this guy flipped the fuck out. But he's, you're just, you've been brainwashed, and that's protocols of the elders of Zion shit. I'm like, this guy's just a Jew hater. And it's like, all this shit he's been brainwashed to respond with. It's like, well, I read the book. Read the fucking book. That's not the tone of the book. I don't have to read that fucking shit. It's like, all right, then leave me alone about it. And he wouldn't. And 3 years later, he's still stalking me. It's like, all you've proven is that you're an asshole.
Okay.
I can talk about this book with this Jewish communist Michael Bord and not have a problem. But this Korean guy who, possibly sacrificed, gave up risked his life, possibly for Israeli interests by fighting the Iraq War, he just could not handle it. It's like, well, fine, let's not be friends. But no, he would not relent. It's like, well, fuck you, then.
Well, a lot of people just can't handle confrontation in general, no matter what it's about.
Well, they can't handle uncomfortable ideas that suggest that maybe they've been fooled. That's the hard thing. I mean, because, he's this closed-minded... No, actually, I got where I am by being fucking open-minded. These people would have been roasting Jews if they were in Germany in 1945. They just go with the fucking crowd. And that's the part of humanity I really don't like to hang out with.
All right. And I think just to put a bow on this discussion, those are good lessons to take away from this. Be open-minded, think for yourself, don't attach yourself to any outmoded system of ideas or your tribe, and don't hang out with people just because they look like you, and go about life doing your own thing, whether you're a writer or whatever you're doing.
Well, you're not gonna shut me up by calling me a naughty word, devil, demon, heretic, anti-Semite. I don't care.
And don't be afraid of naughty words.
Well, I'm not even giving advice, because a lot of people would much rather function without having all the trouble in their life that I do. I can take it, so, I acknowledge I'm different. That's cool. Isn't that what diversity is all about? I can I can tolerate them. I might not want to hang out with them, but they seek my extinction. It's like, well, who's fucking intolerant?
Obviously, diversity. When people say diversity, it's a certain kind of diversity.
Well, yes.
Not the Jim Goad kind of diversity, that's for sure.
No diversity of thinking at all. I wrote one of my favorite articles I wrote for Tacky over the past couple of years is one called "The Tolerance That Only Goes Skin Deep," or "The Tolerance That Is Only Skin Deep." Yeah, if you have 3 penises and are a midget, you're cool, but if you fucking dare think differently, you need to be exterminated.
Yeah. All right. I'm
an unusually tolerant man.
Yeah, with a capacity to talk. Wow, I am impressed by... I have some friends who can talk, and you just did something. Whew.
Me and Black Dahlia of the Dwarves, who agree on nothing, are going to probably start doing a podcast early next year.
Should you even be doing it with somebody else? I think you should just do your own.
Well, I mean, what would it consist of? Taking calls or just talking to myself? I don't know. Well, that's one of the things. I mean,
you can do that.
I've found that people have a tendency to just, like, peek their head out of a foxhole, throw a grenade at me, and duck. I'm willing to discuss anything I've ever written. And if you show me where I'm wrong, I'm like, oh, so it was 1907, not 1908. Usually those are the only things I'm wrong about, like minor fucking details. But, it's just all devils and angels and group pressure. I mean, it just rolls off my fucking back. And, I could theorize, because, okay, I don't want to take up too much of your time. When I was in prison, my deaf brother was murdered in Paris, stabbed 30 or 40 times, strangled with his own belt. I'd like to find who did it and sit in a room with him. But do I have this hard-on to fucking crush every other criminal? No. It's just me and whoever got to my brother. But these people, it's usually... anyone who doesn't think like them, they just go on this jihad. And to me, that's closed-mindedness. So fuck them. They're the bigots. They're the ones with little brains.
There's a lot of shame in that, though, too, of, well, I don't feel very good as a person. I don't feel like my group has gotten far enough in society. Therefore, it must be somebody else's fault.
Why do you need a group? That's the thing. This whole white thing, I don't want to join in pro-white marches or anything, but if you try to come beat me up or tax me or fucking go after my kid for some imagined ridiculous, primitive, pseudo-religious, collective guilt shit intergenerational thing you got going on, fuck you, I'll knock you out. Otherwise, I don't care. I was a dude who was having black girlfriends in the 80s when, it was radical for a Michael Jackson video to be on MTV. Fuck them. I took the risks when there was actually a fucking risk.
Oh, but Jim, you're just fetishizing the black people. That's why you were dating them.
Yeah, maybe. Or that, or I just, we dug each other and had sex. Nothing more. It wasn't really a thing. Or maybe it was, well, is she different in any way? Is there something wrong with that? Are they supposed to be all the same? I don't know. Really, but, after I've had quite a few, and it's really not, you're going to take them on an individual basis, really not much difference.
Okay. Good discussion. Good talk. If my listeners want more of this, find Jim's articles at tackymag.com and Thought Catalog and jimgoad.net, and follow him on Twitter at JimGoad. Thanks for doing this podcast, Jim. I really appreciate it. And it was definitely the easiest podcast I've ever done. Just sit here and listen.
You can scrub the Jews from it if you want. I don't want anybody to take any risks on my behalf.
No. No, you said it. It was part of the discussion. It's controversial, but like you, I think a little controversy is good. So this is Mark Darien for Jim Goad saying, make it a good one.